Last year, many South Africans breathed a sigh of relief as we found out that the ANC had finally come under the 50% mark. Of course, no one could have prepared us for just how far below the 50% mark they would end up, in large part thanks to the MK party losing all of the Zulu vote really hurt the ANC. But fundamentally, for the first time in the history of South Africa, it pushed the ANC into a position where it needed coalition partners. It could no longer lead from the front. As such, the ANC opted not to form coalition governments, but instead go into the government of national unity. Now, that is already a bit of a misnomer because the government of national unity is made up of a bunch of parties. None of them actually matter because effectively just the ANC and the DA would be enough to govern the country together. And if the DA or the ANC were to leave, none of the remaining parties have anywhere near enough votes to actually govern the nation as a majority party. So they need each other effectively for the government of national unity to stay together. I think fundamentally, from the ANC's perspective, having a government of national unity would allow for a bit of a watering down of the power that the DA would have wielded in such a coalition. If the ANC were to just go to the DA and say, hey, we need you to get us over the 50% mark, the DA would have had the ability to really argue and push for a lot more impactful ministerial positions within within the ministry of the presidency. Ultimately, thanks to the GNU, the DA got snubbed, and the DA effectively should have had quite a few more ministerial positions than what it ended up with. But remember, the ANC sort of used this whole thing of, well, we have to make space for all of these other ministers as well, thanks to the government of national unity. Since the formation of the government of national unity, though, it's been nightmares and nightmares upon nightmares. It all started incredibly early with the original budget, the first budget that was tabled by Minister Godongwane, who at the time wanted to increase VAT by 1%, 0.5% this year, 0.5% next year. The DA said, no, we will not vote for that budget. This forced the ANC for the first time to break the statement of intent that all of the parties of the GNU signed, and instead of working within the GNU to find consensus among all of the parties, which is what the statement says, they went outside the GNU and argued and operate or negotiated with parties outside the GNU to support the vote for the budget to go through. Eventually, thanks to massive court pressure, or shall we say, just legal pressure from the EFF and the DA, the minister was forced to forego the 1% VAT increase, and ultimately a sort of different budget was passed. Then came the sacking of Andrew Whitfield. And this was when the DA finally sort of put their foot down and said, hold up, we've had enough of this. Now we're going to take action. So the DA announced two things. One, completely silly and stupid, no one even cares, and that is the retraction from the National Dialogue. The National Dialogue is a $700 million scheme of the ANC in order to get elected next year, next time. So no one cares, right? No one even wants the National Dialogue. And then you have the far bigger one, and the one that most people don't pay attention to because economics sucks. Let's be real. No one cares. But it's the refusal to vote on departmental budgets of ministers that the DA deems to be corrupt. Now, all of this is part of what is known as the Appropriations Bill. You see, the Appropriations Bill is a sort of all or nothing according to the legal teams of Parliament. This is Musa Mayamani, who is the chairperson for the Appropriations Committee, that says simply, the opinion says that if you reject some, you reject all. And if this is true, it would be disastrous because only 10% of a department's budget can be spent. So what he's referring to there is under the current constitutional sort of amendments and rules of the country, should a budget fail to pass, the department is allowed to spend about 40% of the previous year's budget and then no more than 10% thereafter. Effectively, this means that 10% of the remaining. right? So 40% is already spent. So 10% of the 60% that remains, they're now allowed to spend every single month until such time that a new budget can finally be passed. That 10% for most of the budgets will not even cover the salaries for the people in those departments. Ultimately, this means the government comes to a complete standstill. The ANC isn't happy about this. In fact, already so far back as the original budget shenanigans that happened, Ramaphosa and the NEC of the ANC was already pretty unhappy with the DA. And Ramaphosa did this thing that he always does. And this is something that I'm going to have to explore a lot more. Ramaphosa has this tendency to always keep his hands clean, no matter what happens, no matter the allegations of corruption, allegations of criminality, allegations of fraud or theft. He will always pass the buck off to someone else, right? So already back in April, there were growing calls within the NEC, this is the highest governing body of the ANC, to kick the DA out of the government of national unity, with some parties saying, hold up, maybe we just discipline them. But Ramaphosa sort of said he'll leave it up to the NEC. In another statement shortly after the original budget disputes of the VAT increases, the ANC actually said that they wanted to reset the government of national unity. They sort of postured that they understand that the DA is upset about a couple of things, and following this newest budget thing, with the ANC basically just forcing their budget through, going outside the statement of intent, they're now going to bring up new rules, and they're going to make all of the parties agree to new rules in the way that the GNU is governed and operate, so that, they can move forward and actually govern correctly. The issue is that since then, the ANC has done none of that. The DA has consistently, according at least to the NEC, and this is ANC NEC to deliberate on the state of the GNU in the coming weeks. This is from July the 17th, so just a couple of days ago here, or about 4 days ago at this point. The African National Congress will deliberate on the state of the government of national unity in the coming weeks. Relations between the ANC and the Democratic Alliance have soured over the budget impasse and also the firing of a DA deputy minister. The DA has refused to pass the budget of departments run by alleged corrupt ANC ministers like Thembi Simelane and Dr. Nobuli Ngabani. The ANC has postponed the National Executive Meeting to have a national working committee thoroughly review the state of the GNU, alliance relations, and with the SACP and the state of the economy. So the ANC is sort of seeing itself fall apart, as it were. They have the South African Communist Party, for the first time in modern South African history, deciding to go on their own. They're no longer just going to rely on the ANC to get all the votes. They want their own votes. This is a big problem for the ANC, who themselves are a communist party. And now they have the DA sort of making a lot of noise and pushing for a lot of things. So here's what they actually had to say. This is from Fikile Mbalula himself. That the National Executive Committee of the ANC, the National Working Committee yesterday, resolved that it should be postponed to a later stage to do thorough political work on a whole range of issues. The state of the government of national unity, to do political work on our situation within the alliance, of mending relations and dealing with matters of reconfiguration that affect our relations with one of our alliance partners, which have taken a decision to go to the next election on its own. They're talking about the SACP here. That requires deep reflection and decision by the National Executive Committee. So the ANC is dealing with a lot of pressure from within the sort of their own organizations, but then also with this growing threat from the DA. Now, should the DA decide that they will not vote on these budgets, there is a very real chance that the faction within the ANC that wants to kick the DA out of the GNU and instead go with someone like the EFF or someone like the MK, because yes, there are factions in the ANC that actually like the EFF and the MK and sort of think that a more radical approach to economic transformation might be the best bet. Those factions may actually gain a lot more power when they can point to the DA and say, look at how these guys are disrupting just ordinary business and ordinary government. This, of course, will spring into action a whole new slew of issues, because you'll now have the MK and the EFF saying we will not rule or govern alongside Ramaphosa. So now the ANC is going to have to force Ramaphosa out, at least as the president, maybe not as the president of the ANC, this then opens the door for someone like Paul Mashatile. Paul Mashatile is worse than Ramaphosa. Ramaphosa might be a criminal, and he might be a crook, and he might be a very bad guy, but Mashatile is like worse, right? And it's because he's obviously worse. He doesn't even mince words on it. The guy is just a criminal, and he'll probably be much worse for South Africa, at least in the short term. The amount of destruction that man's election will cause would be indescribable. But ultimately, of course, that is why the EFF would like him, because he would also be okay with more extreme measures taken within the ANC, or within the government. Fundamentally, I do believe that the GNU is at its end. I don't see how the GNU continues, except if the DA once again takes their red line and moves it away. Remember, this is a red line from the DA. They said, we will not support the budgets of corrupt ministers. The ANC has desperately been trying to talk to the DA and get the DA to see reason, because they know if this budget fails, they're in serious trouble. The question is, will the DA relent or will the ANC relent? Because my read on this currently is that both parties are waiting for the other one to blink, because both parties know one thing and one thing clearly. Whoever leaves the GNU first, whoever destroys the GNU, will be punished at the next election. And so neither side wants to be the one to destroy it. The ANC might be the one that has to destroy it, though, if it doesn't want to continue to look very, very weak in the eyes of some of the factions within the ANC. Ultimately, let me know your opinion in the comment section down below. As always, hit the like if you liked, the dislike if you didn't, and consider hitting the subscribe if you like the content that I bring. It does help out the channel a ton. Massive shout out to all of the patrons that help support this channel. And as always, see you guys in the next one. A peace.